Good afternoon, collectors and friends. This is Trading Card Therapy, episode number 95. I'm your host, the Dr. Leighton Sheldon. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you joining us today and for many other episodes as well. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I have someone who is joining us in just a couple minutes who I think you're going to be very impressed with, not just his collection, but boy, does he have enthusiasm for our hobby in baseball in particular, and some college football, which we're going to discuss as well, as I'm a Rutgers alum in the Big Ten. So before we bring on Tony, the Southern Collector, I wanted to just have a couple notes here. So the first is I wanted to have a shout out for Orlando, who is someone who runs a YouTube channel called A Collector's Dream. And more than just running a YouTube channel, he's one of our hobby family, and he's been dealing with something very serious. But I did hear that he had a successful surgery, and I was very, very happy to hear that. And Tony in particular, who's joining us, was also gathering messages to send out to him to raise his spirits. And we just want you to know that you're in our thoughts, you're in our prayers, and really we are just one big hobby family. So I hope all is well and that you're on your way to a speedy recovery. And like I said in my little private message to you earlier today, I'm going to hold you to it. You better show up at the Nationals so we can make a deal for your Dwight card and hopefully some many others, and have some laughs along the way. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I was in Atlanta just a couple days ago for the TOPS conference, their industry conference, and I was able to purchase some interesting cards while I had an appointment down there for the TOPS conference. I fit this in. So without any further ado, the first two cards I just showed off on IG earlier today was a really clean T206 broadleaf back. And for the first time, I'm going to reveal it here, as some folks were asking. It's not a big name, but it is clean. And I'm super excited about that. So Bugsy Raymond, kind of a decent name, actually. I just like the color on the card. Might even be a little bit short, but I like that it has a really clean back. Haven't had one of these fresh, ungraded in quite some time. And even though this one's not going to grade particularly high, just really like the eye appeal of it. Very clean. And I'm curious, gang, if you know anything about the 38 Gaudy set, you know that Joe DiMaggio actually has two cards. So Tony, get ready. I'm going to ask you about this card. But do you prefer this card or the more valuable high number card? And I'm curious what your thoughts are. So I'd really love if you left it in the comments to give us your thoughts. But my take on this is I actually prefer the less valuable low number version that doesn't have all of the cartoon type print around it, because it seems to me to be a little bit cleaner and clearer. Like I like the way it looks a little bit crisper. That being said, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know. And of course, the big item I bought down there, which I have not revealed yet, but the staff up here knows, haven't bought one of these in the wild in a while, but I was able to buy a complete T205 set. So not just guys like Cobb and Matty and Cy Young. And you can see, gang, it's not high grade. We would call this collector grade or low grade. I'll take any T205 set any day of the week. You can hit us up at justcollect.com. If you want to see the full video on this collection acquisition, you can check it out on our Just Collect YouTube channel at youtube.com/justcollect. Really cool. A lot of the variations are in there in both types. For example, the Bresnahan, both Eddie Collins. And I'm just showing you some of the highlights of the set. Both Hal Chase cards, Three-Finger Brown, so on and so forth. It has the Wilhelm, the R is missing and suffered. A couple of the Bobby Wallaces, Zach Wheat, and Rube Marquard, who we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, has his own chapter in Glory of Their Times. And Tony acquired a very cool card of his at the recent Strongsville show. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute.
Hey,
Tony, how are you today?
How you doing, buddy?
Great. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm just so excited to be here on this this channel with you, man. I've been watching you for a while, so to be on here is an honor.
Well, listen, it's an honor for me to have you join us here. And as a fellow Tennessee alum here, or just as a fellow college football fan, but as a Tennessee alum, let me rephrase. If we ever get together and Tennessee plays Rutgers, I'm a little bit worried about Rutgers' chances. But, man, I heard some of your discussions on your own YouTube channel, and folks can find you at Southern Collector 14 on YouTube. Such a wonderful channel to watch. Really some great content, anything from like Shoeless Joe Jackson as to why you even collect vintage cards. So check it out if you get a chance, and certainly subscribe if you enjoy the content. But that's what we're about here. We're about the hobby content that we all love, and we're just part of one big hobby family. And so if we do get together, Tennessee and Rutgers, I'm going to hold you to it. I would love to go to a game together and experience what life is like as an SEC fanatical football fan, because certainly I didn't grow up with that. Rutgers was Big East for a while, now Big Ten, but we're not exactly the premier school in the Big Ten, to say the least, yet, Tony.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Neyland Stadium on a Saturday is unlike anything that I've ever experienced. I've been to NFL games. I've been to other college games, and there's some pretty awesome atmospheres at other schools as well, but I'm a little partial. But when you get 101,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs and singing Rocky Top, it's pretty awesome. So, and then also, before we go any further, I want to thank you for what you said about Orlando. He's such a special person. And one of the things that drew me to doing a YouTube channel was the community that I saw inside of that group of people that created content. And he was one of the first guys that reached out to me. And as I've been getting people's texts with their little video snippets, that's a common theme. It doesn't matter if you got 10,000 subscribers or 50. He was the same guy to everybody. And so he's a guy, I've been just keep him in your prayers and your heart and in your thoughts. And but he's just such a great guy.
Really appreciate both Orlando and, of course, you and the rest really of I'll call it the vintage card, community, because obviously that's specifically where you and I are more aligned, as well as Orlando and many others. That being said, really appreciate what you did. And I'm sure at the very least, he's going to sincerely appreciate getting those messages and getting that optimism. And it's going to make him feel really good.
Yeah, I hope so.
It will. It will. So thanks again for joining us. I have lots of different questions. We can go in lots of different directions. But I wanted to make sure we started off where I like to start with all of our guests, Tony, is a little bit of background, meaning no particular order. Like, when did you even start to like sports? And did you collect cards maybe before sports, or was it at the same time? And, where did you generally grow up, and where did you acquire your cards? I'd love to hear about the local card store, to be fair, your Walmart, the Five and Dime, etc. But I'll let you take it away for a few, Tony.
Well, I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and always loved sports, and started playing baseball when I was 5 years old, and just loved watching baseball. Of course, when we grew up, we didn't have cable, and you had the game of the week, and you would sometimes had Monday night baseball. So you really look forward to those times. And if the president was on doing a State of the Union on a Monday night when baseball is supposed to be on, you all of a sudden hated that president. So anyways, we just grew up in that innocent time, and baseball, we didn't get to watch it all the time. So we really appreciated when we did. And growing up in Nashville, we didn't have a major league team, but we had the Nashville Sounds. And so growing up, going to Nashville to Greer Stadium to watch the 81 Sounds, who had Willie McGee, Don Mattingly, Buck Showalter, Otis Nixon, all those guys, those were my dudes. And so I collected baseball cards, played Little League Baseball. I remember in 1978, I was 9 years old, and I bought my first pack of baseball cards. My mom bought it. I didn't have any money. At the concession stand there in our Little League park. And I still remember opening up the cards, and there was a Pete Rose in there. And so that was my first pack. Now, as a kid, I would take my lawnmower money. I'd cut lawns around in our neighborhood and get a little extra cash. We didn't have a lot of money. And when my mom or dad would stop at Whitworth's Market there on Murfreesboro Road, they'd allow me and my brother to run inside, and we'd buy a pack and come back and open it up. Sometimes we would go to the local supermarket with my mother, and they had the rack packs with the 3 packs in the cello, and you could see the front and back cards, and we would bring them home, go through them on the floor in our den, and find all the star cards and think, wow, but we weren't allowed to buy 2 of those, so we had to split it. So the way we did it, we made a game out of it. We'd pour all the cards in that paper bag from Kroger's, and we'd shake them up, which wasn't good for the grade.
No, definitely not.
And then we would draw a card at the time. So, if I got the Reggie Jackson, he would be like, man, if he picked the Nolan Ryan, I'd be like, dang. So you would hope that not one person would get all the stars, but it was, I guess, an early way of breaking, And
Look at you. You were breaking in the 70s, man, not just break dancing, but you were breaking.
Yeah. So, man, it was a fun
really
time. And I just fell in love with the sport and with baseball cards in general. And, went dormant there for a while when I hit college age and got back in it. I guess it's going on a little over 3 years ago now, and just went wild with it. And I've had a lot of fun since then. So that's kind of the story.
Well, I appreciate you, sharing that with us, Tony. I'm curious, do you remember as you got back in? Because one of the things I try to do here with the podcast, and I'm sure I've seen you do with yours and many others in the community, is we're trying to educate people. Mm-hmm. So what's something that happened, let's say about 3 years ago or so, upon reentry, that you wished that you knew upon reentry, but you didn't learn until it was a little too late, that we can share with collectors that maybe are like you, meaning they loved baseball growing up, they even had some cards. Now, I don't know if they played the same game you did with the bag from Whitmore's, but that being said, we've all been in a similar spot where we've re-entered the marketplace. And let's be honest, Tony, parts of this business or hobby can be overwhelming. Yeah. So what is one or two things that happened to you upon re-entry that you'd like to warn people about or give them a heads up about, so that if they decide to re-enter watching this, they're going to thank you for it later on?
Well, I guess it depends on how long they've been dormant. I was dormant long enough where when I re-entered, I'd never seen a slab graded card before. When I got out, people still were putting them in the screw downs with the 4 screws in the corners. And so, when I went to the first card show and I saw those, I didn't really understand it. And I had to ask the guy if you could take the card out. And, they told me no, unless you break it. And
to be fair, if you buy it, you could probably take it out and do whatever you like.
So, initially when I started buying, I didn't understand the grading and I didn't understand the different grading companies. So I did make a really stupid mistake right in the beginning. And I started a Hank Aaron run, and I also discovered eBay, which wasn't a thing when I went dormant. And so I started mainly buying cards on eBay, and I was trying to do a complete Hank Aaron run. And in the process of doing that, I'm also a Tiger Woods fan. And I thought, man, look at these cool Tiger Woods cards, but man, they're expensive, and they were from that Upper Deck series or whatever it was. And there was some that I thought, man, these are cheap, but they're graded. And I bought one for like $50, and it got there and it was a fake card and a fake slab. And so anyways, that's the one stupid mistake I made, but I didn't know any better. And then also in the beginning, I was looking mainly at grades. So, when I did my Aaron run, I had 2 prerequisites. One, I wanted it to be a PSA graded card because I wanted all the slabs to match. And I didn't know enough about grading to know that SGC was reputable and all that stuff. So had to be PSA, and it had to be at least a 5 grade. I wanted a mid grade. And so I bought a 1960 Hank Aaron that's it's got really sharp corners, but man, it is so off center. It's even got the OC designation. But I haven't upgraded that. I just kept it because it tells a story of my grading or my collecting and coming back and just not knowing, but now I'm more about eye appeal, especially with the 60s, the 70s, and the 50s. Now, once you get into pre-war, that eye appeal and the centering and all that, you got to make a decision, right? But in those, they're plentiful enough that you can find a 4 that looks like a 6, and pay $5 money for it. But now I understand all that. But in the beginning, I didn't. So that was one thing that I had to learn.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, Tony. And not just with me, of course, but with our audience who might be watching this and just getting back in. So I'm going to dive right into both of those so that the folks who might be consuming this are going to kind of, be a little bit better off if they decide to re-enter. So the first thing is you could buy, if you want to buy a card, gang, you can buy whatever you'd like. But as Tony alluded to, there's a select few number of grading companies that are well respected. Their cards are fairly liquid. And the best way, I would say, other than asking, let's say, someone like you, Tony, or myself, meaning collectors or a dealer, go to your local card store or a local card show and challenge yourself. If you just got back in the hobby, other than buying probably a pretty nasty hot dog, albeit, but other than buying a hot dog at the show and maybe a price guide or some supplies, I would challenge you to actually just walk around and ask a lot of questions. Because, Tony, you and I both know that if you walked around, no one's going to tell you to buy pro or to buy gem grading. And yet, if you're someone who's just coming back in, you wouldn't really know any better. And if you saw a Michael Jordan card or a Tiger Woods card or maybe some vintage Jackie Robinson and the numbers get real, you don't want to take your hard-earned money and feel like you got taken. You're not going to feel great. And to be honest, we don't want you to feel like that because we want you to stay. So it's part of the reason why I do trading card therapy, because I love the hobby that I not only collect in, but I also call it my home, and that this is how I make a living. And I've been doing so for a long time. If you want to check out our company, of course, you could do that at justcollect.com. And, getting back to center, and of course, we could literally spend a whole episode on this, but I'm going to try to truncate it, Tony, in terms of eye appeal, because you bring up, we're just going to talk for now about the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I thought you had a wonderful point. I just got some card back from PSA today, and I know exactly what you mean. Folks, if you're going to go out and you want to buy a Pete Rose card, may he rest in peace, and you're looking at a 67 tops, because I just got one of those back. I think I got a 6. I wish I had it on my desk. The card looks like an 8. It's not an 8. But the amount of money you would save buying it in a 6, even though it looks nicer, you're talking hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
And if you're budget conscious, Tony, I love what you were saying. I love the 70s. I do. I didn't grow up in the 70s, but I do love the 70s cards. And in terms of what's out there, like I know if you want a 1975 Topps baseball card, there are 6s and 7s of Hall of Famers like Fisk, right? Like all the big guys that look great with that multicolored, beautiful design. And unless you need to brag to your friends you have a 9 or 10, those cards are going to be beautiful for your set. The kind of cards, Tony, when you and I were kids, we would have been super, super proud to own in our collection.
Yeah.
So what Tony's really trying to say with eye appeal is that you could get a card that's vintage that looks really, really nice. But instead of it costing that same amount of a lot of money for that super nice card, because the grade technically might be lower, and who knows what the flaw might be. It might be a scratch. It might be the back corner is a little bit aware. Whatever the case may be, if it resonates with you, then you know the eye appeal is good. There's no like right or wrong answer, because believe it or not, I know some people, Tony, they think the off-centered cards represent good value when they're sharp. And to be fair, maybe they're right. We don't know. But if that's your thing, then go for it. And you can see even a perfect example, I think REA just had that Cobby Cracker Jacket in 9OC. It was off-centered, Tony, but it wasn't wicked. It wasn't gross. No. And someone showed it off. I mean, I would love that card. So that's what Tony's trying to say about eye appeal. You don't need to go out and buy $1,000 Jackie Robinson for it to look like $1,000 Jackie Robinson. You might be able to buy a $350 55 or 56 Topps Jackie that has a pinhole, a little bit of back damage. Someone affixed it to a scrapbook and you see some remnants of it. I mean, I got some cards in the other room of 05s that make me ill thinking about. I got 5s on some and 2s on the other because there's back damage. And, we can argue about that a different day, Tony, but I really appreciate you pointing out eye appeal, because not just for the novices kind of getting back in or re-entering, if you will, it's something that's become very prevalent in our own vintage card community. Yeah. And we saw a lot of that going on at Strongsville.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And so, so when it comes to curating, if anybody's on Instagram, I got a friend on there called 1956 Topps Guy, Matthew, great collector. He posted a 1953 Bowman color Mickey Mantle today, and it's in a 2. And I got on there and, man, I bragged on him. I said, dude, that is amazing because it's centered. A 53 Bowman color centered is the rarest thing. and it is perfectly centered. It's beautiful. So I asked him, just out of curiosity, what's the flaw? He said there's a small little wrinkle that you have to get it just right in the light, right over his head. And he said, it doesn't bother me a bit. He said, this card is beautiful. I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. So that's what we're talking about. He spent a fraction of the money of what it would have cost without that wrinkle. And if you got to have a loop or magnification or the light just right to see it, that doesn't bother me. Some people it would, but it doesn't bother me.
You know, it's a really good point, Tony, you brought up. We're not going to sit here and discuss or preach and say that like one set of flaws is okay and the other ones aren't. That's why I brought up the OC. And for those that don't know, that means off-centered. It's a designation given out by PSA for cards that don't fit the certain specs, which, by the way, if you want to see all the specs on grading on top of my website, justcollect.com, psacard.com goes through each grade and talks about what's allowed. And listen, I'm very nerdy about cards, Tony, as you know. I review that periodically because I know they've been known to change their website and update or, change maybe the specs on certain things. So I like to make sure more than ever I'm on top of it. But you really bring up a great point that to one person, a pinhole could just be like the biggest, no, I'll never have it. And to the other person, they don't care if the card is half peeled off on the back, like that recent 52 Topps Mickey Mantle that sold for silly money in Heritage. Amazing on the front. I don't even know if it was a one. It might have been authentic, but just phenomenal eye appeal. And so the industry and the collecting hobby is maturing. So all we're doing is really trying to arm you with good information so that when you decide to go out, and whether it be it's a Hank Aaron run like Tony, or it's Shoeless Joe Jackson cards or Jackie Robinson cards, which I know both Tony and I like to collect. But I hear something going on there. I want to see what card you got there.
So I found this one on eBay. Check that one out. I'm not showing the grade on purpose, but if you're on a podcast, it's a green T206 Sweet Cap Ty Cobb. Centered, beautiful color. It's a 1.5 because it has glue from a scrapbook on the back.
Oh my God.
The paper isn't ripped, but I got this for half the cost it would have been without the glue. Now, to some people, they wouldn't want the glue. To me, I don't mind the glue. I'll show you another one like that. Again, this is how I like to collect, and this is me. So this right here, it's Babe Ruth, 1921, American Caramel, but it's a 1.5 again. It's centered. These are notoriously for being off center. It has a little bit of stain on the front, which is fine. But on the back, again, scrapbook glue. It's fine by me. Saved me a lot of money. Now I paid a premium for a 1.5, but I didn't pay for a 4. So, but it has 4 or 5 eye peels. So that's what we're talking about right there. That's a little harder to find in the 50s and 60s, but in that pre-war era, man, that is gold. If you can find a little bit of back damage, where's that other one I bought? I bought one at Strongsville. Let me show you real quick. This one is amazing too. Same deal. It's a beautiful Walter Johnson, and couldn't figure out why it had a 2, and I had to kind of look really close. And on the back, there's a little bit of paper loss on the white. I can't tell where exactly it is, but I have to blow it way up.
See it. I see it
right there on that blue border, right by the.
Yes.
Because of that, it got a 2 designation. So that saved me a ton of money. But I mean, there's nothing. It's flawless on the front. Got great registration. So that's how I collect in the pre-war. Now I'm a little pickier on the 50s and 60s. I want it centered, but the number doesn't matter to me.
I agree. I think that you brought up some great points about pre-war, how it does differ a little bit than that 50s, 60s, and 70s era. And Tony, you do bring up great points. So, gang, we understand some of you listen to it every week on either Apple or Spotify, but I do encourage you, if you get a chance, to check out the actual YouTube episode of Trading Card Therapy, which you can find all of them on our YouTube channel on Just Collect, because you're going to be able to see some of these awesome cards that Tony's showing off today. And to be fair, some of our other guests have shown them over the last few months as we've been doing this 25 guest run. So Tony, I have an interesting question for you as you've kind of shared a few nuggets from your collection. What's your favorite low grade high eye appeal vintage card you own?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I like to ask tough questions.
um, it, it's probably the Cobb, because I'd looked for a year but the grain's a premium, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not as plentiful as the red. I had the red one, but I just refused to pay $11,000 for a green Cobb in a 3 or 4. So I was determined that I could find one if I was just patient enough, that maybe had a little back damage, that had that front eye peel, and I found it and got it on eBay of all places. So you can find them at shows, you can find them on eBay, you can find them in auctions, and all that. All those places are very viable places to find these. But just know other people are looking for them too. So it ain't like you're getting one price, 1.5 price for that green Cobb. But because 1.5s on those, you can look them up on the pop counts and then look at the images on VCP, and they not all 1.5s are alike. Some look like mine, and then you got some that have a wrinkle right through his eyebrow. So,
or a lot of rounded corners, I would
yes.
imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, listen, these are excellent points. And I'm curious because I have this whole list of questions, but there's a lot of questions that are coming out of what we're talking about. What's your advice for a collector that feels the itch and doesn't want to have the patience, or just gets frustrated, Tony, because even if you have the means, as you said, like, you don't require an $11,000 Cobb. You'd like to maybe buy whatever the number is, 5,000, 3,000, 6,000, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you hold steady? How do you have the patience? What do you do to carry yourself through?
Well, sometimes I'm not the best person to ask that question, because there's been sometimes I pull the trigger and
I know. Yeah. That's why I'm asking you, Tony. Believe me.
So, there are certain cards that I just require patience, because whether it's I have so much respect for that player or that particular card, that it's very important to me as a collector that card look nice, because to me, that is a reflection of my respect for that player. So I know some people may not understand that, but I did that one on this card. Let me find it. It's a 1952 Topps Jackie Robinson. So I was doing my Jackie Robinson run, and this was one of the last ones. And finding a 52 Topps Robinson that is somewhat centered is very difficult. That one is not 50-50 centered, but it's 45-55 probably. And
I'll tell you what really struck me on that, Tony, I'm sorry to interrupt, is the color.
Yes. That's the other thing that's important to me. Color, no snow. These cards are notorious for having snow on them. But has great color, has a great bag. It's a 4.5, but it's not, I didn't pay a 7.
So I gotta be honest, I can't even process what's happening or think straight, because I'm like, wait a minute, what if I asked Tony afterwards if he'd sell this? Leighton, stop it. Focus. I'm trying to focus, Tony. You're killing me.
Yeah, so the other one I did that, I would have to find it. I'm not as organized. I got my cards out of the safe for this. And
thank you. I appreciate you.
I'm not as organized as I should be, but the other one was this card. And I've been looking for a centered Roberto Clemente rookie for a long time, and I was able to find this one. Now it's in a 6, but I would have took a 4. I just couldn't find one, man. Now that has a scratch. It's on the slab. Okay. I had a razor knife incident when I was opening the box. I had to get it re-slabbed now, but the card's not damaged. But anyways, I felt that card is so iconic, I didn't want to settle. So I was very patient. So I can be patient when I make my mind up to be patient, but there are times when I'm not, and it is what it is.
I appreciate you being honest. I really felt what you were saying, because I feel similarly to not just some of the cards I buy, but I have a really expensive Michael Jordan photo coming in, and I'll show it off when I do. It's the most expensive unsigned Michael Jordan photo that I've ever bought. I might even mention to you in Strongsville. And I've been able to have discipline, because I'm not looking for a particular photo, but I know that when I see it, I'll know, and I go after it. And it's a little bit different than cards in that regard. But I feel the same about cards, for example, and we're going to talk about Cracker Jack's and Shoeless Joe in just a minute. So I had a 1915 Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe. I believe it was in a 2. Yeah. And it wasn't a bad card. But 2 things. One, I want a 1914. I don't know if it's going to happen anymore after our buddy Jeremy, paid $150,000 for a 1.5. But, let's not beat him up too bad. And then number 2, it just didn't have the right feeling for me, even though I knew it was worth a lot. I literally sold it with the intention to acquire a 1914 or a 1915 with just significantly better eye appeal.
Yeah.
And man, when I see you show off, which I don't know if you have it with you, your Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe, I want to make sure we show folks who are at least watching on YouTube when we air this what I mean. And this is in an authentic, right?
It's an authentic. Yeah. And so it's authentic altered. I'm guessing they decided it was trimmed across the top. Now, I did not grade this. I bought it graded. The back is fantastic. It has a few little Cracker Jack stains. So It was one that was in a box.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it is exquisite, man. It's got the color. The corners aren't bad. They're pretty honest. But if it measures out left to right exactly like it should, and it is a heavy 32nd of an inch short, height wise. Now I've got this card. It's a 14 Ty Cobb Cracker Jack card. Now it is graded through SGC. It measures exactly the same size as the one that got an authentic altered grade with the Shoeless Joe. So and it's a 1. Cracker Jacks, they live in the 1 to 3 range mainly, and that's okay. That going in. If you get a high grade one, you paying a fortune for those things. But honestly, Cracker Jacks, one of the things about them that attracts me is the history of them having the stains. So, but everybody collects different. When I got that one, I remember Jeremy Lee, when I posted that one on Instagram the first time, he was intrigued by that card. And it was probably 8, 9, 10 months ago. I don't know exactly when I bought it. But he put it on his story and did a poll. Said, would you rather have this authentic altered card or would you rather have a beat up 1? And there were a lot of people who said they'd rather have a beat up 1 because, as you know, in the Cracker Jacks, you can have holes in them. You can have corners ripped off. And in a SGC, that's a 1. But some people, just because it's trimmed, they look at it like you're helping out the criminals, or whatever. I don't know what they're thinking, but I wanted eye appeal, man. And so for my buck, as the way I collect, that didn't bother me. I knew going in, it was an authentic altar, so it is what it is.
I'll cast my vote right here, and I just want to make sure I heard the question correctly. But Jeremy Lee, by the way, gang, I appear with him every Saturday on Sports Card Live at about 10:30 or 10:45 for the Vintage Spotlight. And then Jeremy and I also have a different podcast. We spun off something called the Vintage Spotlight. We do it about once every 3 or 4 weeks, so you can check that on YouTube as well, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts, like Apple and Spotify and all that good stuff. So, Tony, if I'm hearing you correctly, the question that was posed, would you rather have, if you will, just the dollars are about equal, would you rather have an authentic version of the Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe Jackson from 1915 in an authentic holder that might be trimmed? Who knows what the reason is it's in the authentic holder, but the eye appeal is better than having the card that, even though it has the number grade of 1, so to be clear, gang, if you're kind of new or you're re-entering the space, they grade the cards on this 1 to 10 scale. But then several years ago, because believe it or not, Tony, they didn't always have the authentic grade. So that was something that when it came out was a big, big deal, even though it was many years ago. It wasn't always when grading was around. And so the reason why it's super important is because Tony knows he has an authentic card. But to me, the idea of having, because I've seen super low grade Cracker Jacks that are just downright ugly.
Yeah.
And I just, for the life of me, I don't know why you would rather have, even though someone else is telling you this is scored 1.
Well, what he did, he shared a picture of mine, and then there was another one available on eBay at the time, and it had a hole chewed in right by his mouth, and it had a missing corner, and it was it was pretty ragged. And a lot of people chose that card, man. So it
Yeah,
wasn't just a
I wouldn't do
question.
that.
It was 2 cards side by side to make
No, so I
that
mean
play.
it was great that he did that, and there is no right or wrong here. But for me, I look at it similar to the way you do. It's respect for the player, right? Like if I didn't love Jackie Robinson, I wouldn't buy the card. If
Yeah.
I didn't love Roberto Clemente, I wouldn't really buy the card for myself because there's many other ways to spend our money in the world
Yeah.
or in our hobby. So similar to you about Shoeless, that card was a lot. I knew I was going to make a profit. I still am going to hold out hope and I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm going to find one at the National that I can make work. But if you had to ask me right now, I would definitely take an authentic, even if it was a little bit smaller than yours. Meaning I would tolerate less border as long as there was some sort of border because the color is super important to me. And for whatever it's worth, and I know you're going to be like, Leighton, you are such a big nerd, but I got to say it. So for Cracker Jacks in particular, they had 2 years that they produced baseball cards, right? 1914 and 1915. And the 1914s were produced only in one way. Many folks don't realize this small but yet important difference between the 2 years. So in 1914, Cracker Jack baseball cards could only be had out of the actual candy packages, the candy boxes of Cracker Jacks. But in 1915, there were 2 distinct ways to get Cracker Jack baseball cards. One of them was through the Cracker Jack packages, meaning the literal same way. But then they had an offer, and of course, I don't remember what it was because I've seen the coupons, but it might have been sent in 25 cents and 50 coupons, whatever it was. And you got a whole set in an album. And believe it or not, at the Cleveland National, I'm going to say 10, 12, 15 years ago, a fresh, like it had to be a factory set, walked in. And I know the guy who bought it. Oh my God. That's like one of my biggest, that's one of my biggest misses. But the point is, for me personally, I want the 1914 Cracker Jack because it was first and it's so much more difficult to obtain. But now I find myself chasing my tail. I'm literally willing to go to the National and not just accept the 1914, but I'm going to look for a 1915 similar to yours. If I can find one with good eye appeal, I'm going to be okay with that. But this is where you and I differ. This is what makes the world go round. I don't really want Cracker Jack stains on the card because I'd like to be able to show someone. But to be clear, if I earn enough money one day and I can have 2, this is my ultimate. I want to have a 1914 Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe with staining on the back. And I want to have a 15 that looks like it came from a factory set, even if it's authentic. This is my nerdy rant on Shoeless Joe. And by the way, if I ask you to borrow money at the National, this is why.
Yeah, you know, I just like the story of it. To me, that's what makes the Cracker Jack. Because, you know, now we grew up with Cracker Jacks, but when you pulled the prize out, it was inside a little paper wrapper. You had to rip the wrapper open and get the prize out. Well, back then, they didn't even put those cards in wrappers. Like that card slid in the box up against the confection. So it soaked that molasses right into the cardboard. Whereas, you know, the box, the whole reason Cracker Jacks were exploding a few years before that, the guys who invented Cracker Jacks, they developed a wax box that could hold the Cracker Jacks, and they developed a system of making the Cracker Jacks where they didn't just form into a clump. So they did a whole lot of things to get to where they were, and they only did it those 2 years with the cards. But man, it's been downhill ever since with those prizes.
I know it certainly pales in comparison to 1914 and 1915. So last note on Cracker Jacks, then we'll move on because I can keep you all day, Tony. If you ever decide to move on, please let me know. Give me a ticket, give me a place in line so I can have a chance. So I wanted to, and I know we talked about your channel a little bit earlier, but I don't know that we dove in so much. I know that you love the cards and you love the community, but I'm curious. I know you met Orlando early. What was going through your mind when you started to produce content as a collector in a space that you re-entered? What were you hoping to try to either do or accomplish? And have you been able to do that in the time? Because I love your channel, and you're one of the few channels I generally just listen because it's efficient, right? I can drive and I can listen. Obviously, I can't listen, watch, and drive at the same time. That's not very good. But I like to watch yours. It's just not that easy. I try to listen to most of them. And I'm curious, what is still driving you? Because I love it. You always have such enthusiasm and a wide smile. And I'm curious what the secret sauce is.
Well, I mean, I love it, man. It's a lot of fun collecting. And so when I first started collecting, I was in a vacuum, and I just showed my wife what I'd pick up, or my brother at work, and he works with me, and my wife would be like, yeah, that's neat. And that would be the end of it. There wasn't anything fun with that. And I was trying to talk my childhood friend. He has a killer collection that him and his dad put together when he was growing up, and he went dormant, but he still had all his stuff. I was trying to talk him to go to shows with me because I wanted somebody to collect with, man. It just wasn't fun doing it by myself. I guess it'd be the equivalent of going playing golf by yourself. Or I know you play tennis, just going and hitting a tennis ball against the wall all day long. That's just not as fun. So I needed to find a community. Right. And so the first community I had was Instagram. And so I opened up a few guys, Nate, In-Card Board Veritas, Luke, Bleecker Street Cards, some other guys, 1956 Tops guy, and Sports Cards and Sunsets. All those 5 got in my feed somehow. And I started seeing, I thought, man, they have a show, they have a card account. It's not their personal account. And I thought, man, that's cool. So what I did, I opened up my IG account, and I had Southern Collector 14. That's where the name came from. And I just started posting my cards, and I get real deep and get creative on what I said about them. And then I only followed other people's card accounts. So whenever I went on that page, I only saw baseball cards. So it was cool. At first, I wasn't even going to let my family follow me because I didn't want to get it clouded up. I wanted it to be a separate thing. And then as I did that, I found YouTube. I started watching YouTube. I dove headfirst into it. I was watching Greg Miller, Midlife Sports Cards. I was watching John Mangini, but and saw the community they had there and the people that would comment, and then they would do these episodes like what we're doing right now, where they just hang out and talk and do the lives and things like that. And then I found Dave Berg, Blue Jacket 66, and he took me down the pre-war hole. And man, I ain't been the same since. So last year at Strongsville, they did, all these people were posting their Strongsville videos, and it looked like so much fun. And that's what planted the seed in my head to do a YouTube channel. And so when I went to Cleveland last year for the National, I talked my buddy Tim into going with me, and there was the YouTube get together one night, and we went to that. I wasn't creating content. I met Greg Miller there, and he gave me his phone number. I told him I was thinking about doing that, and he was nice enough to do that. Just another part of how awesome our community is. And so I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. My biggest hurdle, I felt like I wasn't an expert. I'd only been in it 3 years. I had the passion. I love baseball history, but I can't tell you who the head of the guy that runs PSA or Collectors Universe, or the name of the guy that does Fanatics. I don't care. Like, that doesn't float my boat, man. I like baseball. I like history. I like the cards. And so that was what my channel was going to have to be. So I'm not going to get on there and talk about grading scandals and all this other stuff. I mean, I can share what we just talked about because that's my personal feelings towards things. But, when it came down to them buying SGC, I didn't do a video about that. That's not my lane. So you got to know what your lane is, and you got to be true to yourself. And that's just and so if the passion of that comes through, that's just who I am, man.
That's such a great explanation. I appreciate you sharing it with us. Shout out to Greg Miller from Midlife Cards. If you are not subscribed, check out a video of his. I listen to almost everything that he does. Finally got to meet him in person at Strongsville. And he really, along with many others like you, Tony, you guys don't even do this as a career. This is just a hobby. And to be honest, I'm just grateful that I'm, allowed in it, if you will, because I do collect, but I do buy and sell, and I appraise and broker, for a living. But I do love this very much. I mean, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And like you, I started playing baseball as about a 5-year-old, similar to you. I'm at my Fisher Price bat. I mean, remember, I called it Sheldon Stadium. And I was hitting balls, and my mom would yell at me, "What the hell do you need more baseballs for?" I'm like, "Well, because I lost them." She's like, "How'd you lose them?" Like, I hit them far. If you can get outside, look for them, and help me, like, then you don't have to buy new ones. But little Leighton needs more baseballs. And so, as far as the community goes, it's interesting, Tony, for my plight. So I started trading card therapy really as a way to vent and talk about like what I love or maybe issues in the hobby. I don't talk about every issue. I don't cover every breaking news story. That's not my style. I do this once a week, but I did feel like I had a lot of experience and knowledge to share with folks. Mm-hmm. And it's ebbed and flowed for me. And so what happened, I don't remember the exact moment, but man, I saw a lot of great collabs. And I'm like, this is fun. Yeah. So around episode 75, I just made a deal with myself, kind of similar to the way that you've been making deals with yourself to be patient, find that right card. I said, you know what? I'm going to have 25 episodes of just amazing content with collectors, with dealers, with auction house owners, with people in the hobby that I love. And believe it or not, Tony, this is episode 95. Oh, so there's only 5 more guests. Episode 101 is going to be a recap. It's going to be a phenomenal episode. We're going to take clips, the best of from each guest. And I'll probably take a little time off after that to kind of get back into the mode of doing it on my own. And like, I can just ramble and, I have the gift of gab. I'll just talk and talk. But make no mistake, I've already thought about what I'm going to do around episode 105 or 110 when I'm looking to bring guests back in. And to me, it's kind of reinvigorated my love for doing this, because I'll be honest, if I was just going to talk for eternity, in other words, once a week, trading card therapy for the next 10 years, I don't think I'd have that fire.
Yeah.
At some point. But man, you and many others like Jeremy and like Greg Miller, who's not been on the show, but if we're lucky enough, we'll have him on here. And then guys like Larry Solomon, who I just talked to earlier today, he's one of my oldest friends. He invested in Just Collect 20 years ago. Wow. And even though he's no longer a partner, we're still the best of friends. We're having dinner in a few weeks. So like the cross section of people that I've been able to talk about the hobby with, Tony, I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
And really, it's made the hobby again for me so much more fun when I go to a convention. Yes, I'm there to buy, and I like, seeing what you show me. I'm like, oh, dang it, I missed that Rube Marquardt T227 sign. I think I've not slept at least 2 nights because of that. Believe me.
Come on.
Definitely one. But anyway, joking aside, this is such a wonderful space because, Tony, whether it be it's you, it's me, it's anyone in between or on the outside, you can make content on IG. You can produce videos on YouTube from 1 minute to 100 minutes and anything and everything in between. And someone out there is not only going to cheer for you, but look what Greg did for you early on. Yeah. You guys exchanged numbers and he was helping you. So if you need help as far as collecting or content, Theo last week was on from 4 Collectors. What a great dude. And I love what they're doing as far as like vintage trade nights. Hopefully they can pull off one at the National. I could keep you forever. I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions. Okay.
All right.
So the first one is no pressure, but I want you to boil it down to one thing that is your favorite thing about the National Sports Collectors Convention, which, believe it or not, is less than a couple months away in Chicago this summer.
Well, I've only been to one. That was last year. So my favorite thing was just, I'd only been to the Nashville Card Show. There's 2 big ones, and the one in the fall and the one in the spring. And I'd been to a couple of those, and since I'd come back in the hobby. But, walking in the door of the National, man, was mind-blowing for me. So what I saw there was really cool. So you had the vintage, you had the modern, you had little kids, you had old dudes sitting around looking through common bins trying to fill out sets. You had breakers back in the back corner. You had PSA in there set up, taking submissions, and I did submit a few cards in that one-day turnaround deal. And then you had the museum pieces, man, the REA and all the heritage and love of the game, and they all have all their displays and had all the uniforms last year, and then Golden had all their big high dollar stuff. So it's just a mix of all of that. And honestly, man, I was blown away. I can't wait to go back. It was so much fun. Me and Tim are going back again. So,
listen, I'm so excited. I love every aspect of the National, and believe it or not, my staff and some of my other peers in the hobby look at me like I'm nuts. I actually wish it was longer. I wish it was longer, you know, in terms of duration. I'm being dead serious. I know that people think I'm a little psycho, but there is no getting old of it for me. And I don't think that'll change this year. So really looking forward to seeing you out there in just like we said, a couple months. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to put in your thinking cap. If you could do whatever you'd like with technology in the hobby, what is one change you would like to see made?
I mean, are we talking about grading, or are we talking about
whatever you'd like to talk about? It could be grading. It could be bidding in an auction. It could be managing your collection. It could be going to a card show and finding the stuff more efficiently, like what Mascot's done. You could use the wish for whatever you want. I just wanted to utilize technology.
So I'm the most technologically stupid person that you probably could ask that question to.
This is perfect, though. Then I want to see what you say.
Maybe to see technology help with the grading of the cards and not hurt it. So, you know, we've seen a real curve lately. So, you know, an early slab PSA grade is almost worthless now. If it's a 7, everybody scoffs at it and says, well, that'd be a 5 today. And so there has to be a way to keep it more uniform. I don't know whether technology is the answer to that or not, but you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, IT, you really can't grade cards that way because it's such a 3-dimensional piece. You got to know the thickness. There's the look, there's the feel of the cardboard. So it ain't like you can just slide it in a machine. But you know, I think in the future, if grading keeps going the way it is with the backlog times, they're going to have to find a way to get technology to step up and help with that, with grading. It's just so the turnaround times. I don't grade a lot. I mean, it's very rare. I usually buy already graded cards, but I do on occasion. And you know, but one of the reasons I don't, because I just don't want to wait for my stuff forever. So I'm going to take a stack about that tall of cards to the National that I'm just going to pay extra and get them done while I'm there, man. Because I don't want to wait 3 months. I like to have my cards with me. So
listen, I like having my cards with me as well. And to address your answer about technology and grading, you know, I talked to a lot of people about it, Tony, and forget about if they think it could do the job or not. Okay, so putting that aside, like in other words, would actual, you know, AI grading or using technology in some way work? Let's put that aside for a second. I do think PSA specifically is using technology to aid in the process of grading.
I agree.
But they're not using computers to grade the cards.
Yeah.
And so to me, as much as I would love to see a computer grade the card, I actually don't care how they get the consistency. So if they need IT, AI, and computer technology to get the consistency, then let's do it. Yeah. If there's some other way to do it, like we need to go to the moon, listen, I'll go. Katy Perry went, I'll do it. You know, right? Or outer space, you know.
You wouldn't look as good in tights as she did, though. I'm just telling you.
That's how you know you got to wrap up, man. I almost fell apart there. That was a really good joke, Tony. So I am not sure exactly what's going to happen, but for whatever it's worth, the numbers are talking, right? Like if we were just a couple of dudes sitting around and having a beer discussing business and we didn't collect cards, we just said these were widgets, Tony, I'd have to think if the numbers still continue to grow in staggering fashion, they're going to have to embrace technology to grade, because it's not going to be acceptable for the masses to wait months and months or accept delays, you know, several times a year. I personally don't have a problem if they could use technology to grade the cards more accurately, because all I really want as someone who collects but then also grades cards and buys and sells and, you know, appraises and brokers, is consistency. One of the hardest things for me to contend with when I'm buying an ungraded collection, like some of the cards I just showed off today that I bought in Atlanta, all from a longtime collector, is it's really hard to explain to them how grading works. And the way that I embrace, if we disagree on a card, is one of two things. If it's expensive, get the card graded yourself. Call me when it's graded, and I'm happy to pay you more. But I just want you to know you may not get the grade you think you're going to get. Or you can grade it through me, and if it gets a 5, I'll pay you X. If it gets a 4, I'll pay you Y. And that's worked many a time. But make no mistake, Tony, the reason why I do that is because the grading is not as consistent as I would like. It's getting there, and it's definitely changed. So you made a good point, and I could keep you easily another hour if we get into this. But yes, the older slabs, especially in vintage, don't look the way that cards are getting graded today. So that's a great public service announcement to walk away from this episode, that if you are seeing the non-hologram super old PSA cases, make sure you throw caution in the wind when you're evaluating what you think they're worth.
Yeah.
Because in some cases, believe it or not, you might take a 7 of a 33 Gaudi. You might rather have a 4 or 5 today.
Yeah.
And you'd actually save money and have a better looking card, which is scary to think, but it's just the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely the truth. So, it's kind of like an umpire strike zone. It can be high, it can be low, it can be wide, whatever, but it needs to be consistent. And if you know what the strike zone is, you can deal with that. But when it's all over the place, that's a problem, man. You can't play by those rules. So
I'd like to tell you it's the reason why I didn't make the majors, but it's not. So Tony, with that, I'm going to cut off my questions because I could easily keep you more time. I wanted to thank you. Oh, excuse me. I wanted to thank you sincerely for taking as much time as you did. And I had a blast getting to know you better and learning more about you and your collection. And believe me, I have 2 or 3 cards in my mind that I want to approach you on at the National. And I think what I'm going to do is, and I'm just sharing the strategy now. Hey, Tony, you want to grab a beer one night? Maybe 6. And then by the morning you wake up, you're like,
where'd my cards go?
We do a deal? Yeah, Tony, check. We did a deal. You told me you're really into the 70s. I gave you every 70s card you've ever wanted.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd go for that if I had a couple pops.
Yeah, probably not. But nonetheless, Tony,
in there or something.
Yeah, well, certainly not going to happen over here. Tony, thank you so much for not only joining me today, but what you did to reach out to Orlando and to share the well wishes and the positivity. Dude, you're a good guy.
It's been amazing, man, because I keep getting text and from YouTube content guys, and I think we're going to end up with about 40. But it's been an onslaught, man. It's going to be a pleasure to put that together, and it's kind of taken on a life, kind of like the We Are the World deal, where it's just a bunch of people coming together for one cause. And I've been getting choked up about it, to be honest with you.
Listen, getting goosebumps.
I hope one day people think that much of me, man, because we can have the nicest cards in the world. We can have a YouTube channel that has 100,000 subscribers, but at the end of the day, if you're a crappy person and you treat people bad, that's what people are going to remember about you. But when you're laying there in that casket, them cards ain't going with you, and them subscribers are gone. But man, what people think about you and the legacy you leave behind is the most important thing about this life we live. So Orlando's doing it right. So he's a good person to hold up as an example of who we all want to be.
Tony, so are you, my friend. And I want to make sure with you on here that I say to my son that I love you, Crosby, more than words, or more than I know how to express in words. And you're right. I certainly, had my own things to deal with. And, upon facing something uncomfortable and terribly scary, I wasn't thinking a heck of a lot about cards. I was thinking about my impact on my son and on others. And, with that, before I get choked up, I'm going to wrap it up with you here today, Tony. And I hope to see you real soon. I know I'll see you at the National, but maybe sooner than that, we hope.
All right, man. Thanks, Leighton.
Take it easy. All right, gang. That was Tony, and he's also affectionately known as Southern Collector 14. So if you want to find him on Instagram or his YouTube channel, you can find him there in both spots. And please do not make him an offer he can't refuse on the Shoeless Joe 15 Cracker Jack, because I'm going to weep. I'm just going to cry. It's not going to be pretty. But the joking aside, I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you for giving our podcast, Trading Card Therapy, a chance. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, it would mean a lot to me if you hit that like button. And if you do enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel. Just collect. You're going to enjoy some of the other hobby content that we put out in the future. Until next time, see you real soon.